So there's some particularly interesting news today. Let me take a sip from my coffee to prevent myself from saying anything in the first 8 to 15 seconds. Utah bans transition care for transgender youth. We have some interesting stuff coming out of Utah. It's not good. Now, again, let's throw this headline through the imagination machine. Right? What if someone did a law that banned, I don't know, let's say ADHD medication for children. Let's say depression medication for children. Right? Would that make sense? Well, they are experimental. You know, if your definition of experimental is we don't really have science on long-term effects, right? Because that's their goal here. Experimental. Wouldn't putting kids on SSRIs be experimental? Now, of course, that's not really that controversial. The facts of the matter are SSRIs work for some people. They don't work for other people. How do you know if it works? You try it, and if it doesn't work, you stop. It's the same mentality with transition care. You try it. If it doesn't work for you, you stop. And you're back to normal, whatever your normal was before that. That's a fact with how puberty blockers function. There's no long-term effect. We know that. Why do we know that? Because we've been using puberty blockers on cisgender people who experience early onset puberty, which can cause complications. You know, so we know that they're safe. We understand that. We've done the research on that. Now, I also ask you for this question. Of course, you know, anyone who supports this ban, they don't speak in logic. They don't communicate in logic. So I know speaking in logic is irrelevant for that. You're not going to convince anyone that believes that transgender people shouldn't be allowed to go to the doctor. You're not going to convince them. There's no good argument. You know, if I just sit down here and I craft the right collection of words that just hits every logic center in their brain, they don't have any logic centers, right? So obviously this is just, they hate queer people and they want to advocate for that bigotry via legislation. But, you know, just throwing it out here, just for the sake of my own mental health, let's pretend like the other side of this conversation is interested in logic, just so that I could get through this segment here. How do we know what puberty blockers are? We gave them to cisgender people when they would experience early onset puberty. Hormone therapy. How did we even get hormones? How did we get exogenous hormones, and why are they so easily available? For example, a lot of people, you know, when they go on some form of birth control, they can have hormonal issues that results in them needing to take hormones. People going through menopause, for example, can need exogenous hormones in order to maintain bodily function without, you know, losing things like bone density and so forth, right? You know, a lot of men, for example, cisgender men, in their 30s and 40s, they start to undergo massive muscular degrowth and loss. Why? Because their rate of testosterone production decreases. So a lot of men in their 30s, 40s, and sometimes 50s get prescribed hormone therapy in the form of testosterone so that they can boost them back up to baseline levels. Hormones have been given to cisgender people forever. You know, at least as long as we've had them in the modern medicine world that we live in. So the idea that this is like a new thing is wrong. It's just not true. The idea that it's understudied, I mean, everything is understudied. You know, I want to study every aspect of every drug. You know, I want to study how French fries affect your body. You know, I want to study how Coca-Cola affects your body, right? So everything is understudied. But the idea that transgender healthcare is in any particular way understudied compared to other forms of healthcare is honestly ludicrous to me. But again, we live in a country full of toddlers. The average American, mentally speaking, is about 3 or 4 years old. They never really progressed after that. And we live in a country of toddlers and bullies. That's just how it is. I mean, you just have to face facts. Most Americans are bad people. It's just, they were born to be bad people. They were bred to be bad people. They were raised by bad people. Most Americans, it's just a fact, are shitty human beings. Most people, in Western civilization especially, I don't know anything about Eastern civilization, never been there, so I can't make that claim. But in Western civilization, most people, they are taught from a young age to hate another person. They are taught from a young age to judge other people. That's just how we live. That's capitalism, baby. We live in a shithole. And so, again, people that advocate for this stuff, they don't believe in logic. They don't. They just don't, right? What is logic, right? Logic is kind of like trying to apply mathematical standards to language, right? You can't really do it, but you can kind of, right? You know, for example, 2 plus 2, it equals 4. You can't say 2 plus 2 doesn't equal 4 if it's just, it equals 4, right? So you apply that kind of thinking to language, right? You would think, oh, if someone's issue with transgender people is based on the medical stuff, right? They've said that. It's understudied. Well, you can point to 9 other things that they don't believe should be banned that are equally understudied, and they would say, I never thought of it that way, I guess I changed my mind. That doesn't happen with these people, right? You don't actually talk to these people and then they actually change their mind. Why is that? Because the logic, right, that they are using, right, because in math it's easy, everyone has the same rules, right? But imagine if they had their own math, and in their world 2 plus 1 equaled 4. Well, that's how this conversation works when it comes to transgender rights in this country. Is one side is saying 2 plus 2 equals 4, and they're saying, why don't you understand this? It's obvious 2 and 2 equal 4. The other side, they just have a different rule set. They're not speaking the same language. It's like one side is speaking English, the other side is speaking Mandarin. They're completely different languages. They're spoken in completely different ways. They're written in completely different ways, right? And so you can't really have that kind of conversation. So again, people that support this kind of stuff, they are motivated not by logic of, the medical stuff, whatever. They might say that, but that's not the case. They are motivated, their internal logic is that they hate transgender people. That's it. That's their internal logic. You can't reason with that because it's inherently and fundamentally illogical. You cannot do that, right? It's like, again, if someone says, actually, 2 plus 1 equals 4, and they genuinely, with all of their heart, believe that, there's no amount of showing the math on 2 plus 2. It doesn't work because fundamentally, they disagree with the tools being used, right? And so that's why this conversation, when we have this conversation with people in our families, whatever it is, it's talking past each other, right? You will never, ever, ever convince someone not to hate transgender people with a logical argument about healthcare standards. It's not going to happen because fundamentally they don't give a shit about, they're 17, too young to make that decision. They don't care about that. 17-year-olds can drive cars. They can get guns in several states in the country, right? They can make a decision like going to college, which is essentially deciding to be an indentured servant for 30 to 40 years. A 17-year-old's allowed to make that decision. How many people do you know that are saddled with student loan debt that said they were groomed in high school? As children, they were groomed into thinking that they needed to go to college. They went to college because people groomed them to believe that. And now they're 37 years old and they've still got a shitload of student loan debt. They've already paid what they borrowed 4 times over and they still got 5 times left. How is that possible? Were they incapable of making that decision at 17? Now we can have that argument, but again, that's not the argument we're having here, because people that think transgender people are not allowed to go to the doctor, They don't give a shit about the logic of their argument. They use that argument because that is a popular method of it. They could, and what they want to say is, I hate trannies and I hope they all die. That is their heart of heart opinion. But for whatever reason, the language that they use to express that opinion is wrapped up in something else, right? Because for whatever reason, they, I guess, feel societal pressure to hide their true opinion, which, again, their true opinion is, I hate trannies and I hope they all die and I will do whatever I can to kill them. That's their opinion, right? But they don't want to go to jail, right? They don't want to waste their time in jail, going out on a tranny killing spree, which is what they want to do. So what they do is they vote for politicians that will do it legally, and then everyone gets away with it and the trans people die. And that's why they use stories like, oh, they're too young. Interesting. So anyway, let's read this. This is in Utah. I think I've pretty much said everything I need to say, but let's get the details here. I have an issue where I give my piece before I actually read the story. So, but I feel like people are sufficiently primed already in this modern environment where they don't really need me to set the scene here. But either way. Governor Spencer Cox of Utah signed a bill on Saturday that blocks minors from receiving gender transition health care, the first such measure in the country this year, and was expected to be a wave of legislation by state lawmakers to restrict transgender rights. The law prohibits transgender youth in the state from receiving gender-affirming surgery and places an indefinite ban on hormone therapy with limited exceptions. So again, is there a medical basis in this? You can debate that. But if you want to open the door for a medical debate on hormone therapy and puberty blockers and so on and so forth, then we would need to block all healthcare for kids. Again, SSRIs on kids. We got to, even giving kids, fast food. Hey, it's understudied. So should we ban fast food for kids? Should we ban ice cream for kids? Hey, we don't really know what this does yet. It's understudied, right? So again, but it's not about the logic. Because the truth here is that the way hormones affect your body is extremely well studied. Now again, anything and everything could be studied more, right? Everything in the medical industry is understudied. That's just where we're at in the 21st century. We're still learning, okay? In the same way that 300 years ago, when people were consuming rocks and, putting lead in the water for taste, the effects on that were understudied, right? So again, everything is understudied by default. But what we know is that transition healthcare is a lot safer than almost any other kind of healthcare. Right? Like, for example, you go in for a routine procedure, a surgery of some kind to remove a tumor or maybe to install a pacemaker or some other issue. Surgery always carries a risk, right? But let's imagine you don't, the doctor doesn't sneeze and then cut your heart open and you bleed out on the table. You make it through the surgery and your life is better. Right? But there's a risk. What if the anesthesia, what if you're allergic or you've got some reaction and no one knew about it beforehand and now you're comatose or you die? It's possible. Should we ban all healthcare? Are children in need of surgery allowed to make the decision on whether or not they get surgery? But again, logic, right? Again, I'm having a logical argument, speaking in the English language with the English language. But people on the other side of this conversation, earlier I likened it to speaking English versus speaking Mandarin, but more so, less so, it's less Mandarin and more of like a caveman language, right? Where symbols and letters and words are inconsistent every time you say them, right? So when you say, like, you care about something, the word care means something differently, completely different, depending on the context, right? So I ask them, why don't you care about this? They go, well, I care about that. But do you believe the same thing? Do you believe that children shouldn't be allowed to go to the doctor if they have cancer? Well, no, because, whatever. Again, the word care automatically, suddenly, instantaneously, the definition changes completely in their mind, right? And that's consistent for them, right? So again, it's impossible to have this conversation. It's just impossible. But what do we do in a country where a good quarter of the country wants to just, they want to kill minorities? It's a verifiable fact. I mean, just look at what's going on, right? Read the news every day. About a quarter, about 20 to 25% of this country, their first and foremost goal is to execute minorities as quickly as possible. Now, most of them are afraid of doing extra legal means. Now, you see a lot of them are not afraid. They go on mass shootings. They go on killing sprees. They go to, drag queen celebrations and they start killing people. They go to gay clubs. They start killing people. These people, they're not afraid of law, right? They have nothing to lose. But there's a lot of people that have the same ideology that have something to lose, right? Let's say someone is a 1488 person. They want to secure a future for their white family. Well, if they go on a shooting spree and kill a bunch of black people, immigrants, trans people, right? Then their kids are going to be at a worse part in life, right? Their kids, who they want to secure a future for because of their beautiful white skin, they're going to be without a father, a mother, whatever. Their life is going to be worse. They might even be traumatized by what you're doing to the point where they might become a cuck soy-infused feminist, a weakened male or whatever it is that it is in your mind, right? So again, what do you do in that situation? You vote for a politician that changes the law, because the law is irrelevant. The law doesn't matter. There is no equal protection under the law. If you're gay, you have less rights. It's just a fact. If you're black, you have less rights. That's a fact. If you're an immigrant, you have less rights. That's a fact. There is no equal protection under the law. The law is made up. So what do you do when you're a 1488 person, you want to kill minorities, but you don't really want to take the heat, and you don't want to go to jail, and you don't want to maybe traumatize your own family? Well, you brainwash them by telling them that this is normal. It's normal to hate minorities, right? You give them a comfortable environment, a welcoming environment where everyone hates minorities together. And then you create a culture around promoting a certain sort of political ideology that just totally by happenstance, completely just, it's, whoops, we didn't think about that at all. The Republican Party, hey, we're just in it for the tax cuts, yo. It's just an unfortunate fact that the Republicans also are passing laws that are, again, committing a genocide of minorities. Hey, the Republicans are also, beefing up police that are murdering black people all across the country. Hey, Democrats do that too, to be fair. But again, it's not the intended outcome. Hey, we're just in it for the tax cuts. We're just in it for that fiscal responsibility and cultural mind. We don't want to kill the minorities. I mean, I'm not going to shed a tear if they die, but hey, what's not our goal? And we just have to play this game where 20 to 25% of the country wants to kill every minority group as quickly as possible. And obviously they're going to hide the ball. And then what about the other 75%? Well, let's remove minority groups. So let's say, what about the other 50%? They just don't give a fuck. That's it. I mean, so you got group one, we got 3 groups. Let's imagine all the minorities grouped together. What is that? 20 to 25%. The freaks, the fascists, the psychos, 20 to 25%. That leaves a lot of people in the middle. And this is what I was saying before. Most Americans, especially most Westerners, are just bad people. That's just a fact. They're bad people, right? So you got a middle here that's about 50 to 60% of people, and they just literally don't fucking care at all. They don't give a fuck. right? So one side wants to kill the other minority side, and the middle is just watching the show. They don't give a fuck. Black people getting shot dead in the street by cops, they don't give a fuck. Someone with mental health issues being strangled to death by cops in the back of a police car. Who cares? Transgender people getting murdered in hate crimes, they don't give a shit. Gay people being massacred in nightclubs, they don't give a fuck. They don't care. They don't give a shit. So we got this society where the majority doesn't give a fuck, and there is a minority of people that are not in minority groups, right? Because typically these people are white, though. You know, there's a lot of black and Hispanic genocidal white supremacists. I know people struggle with that, but hey, it's a fact. I struggle with the facts too sometimes. It blows my mind when I meet people like Caitlyn Jenner. I've never met her in person or anything, but like when I see them in the wild, it's like, whoa, holy shit. You know, that's some crazy fucking stuff. But anyway, so again, you have three major groups in this country. Group A, they want to murder down and destroy all of Group C. And they also want to slowly over time brainwash Group B. Group B, the majority, 50 to 60% of the country, they're neutral. They're apolitical. They don't give a fuck. Right? They don't give a fuck. They're shitty people. That's just a fact. And then you got the minorities who, let's be honest, there's a lot of minorities that are also shitty people. There's a lot of minorities that also don't give a fuck. But at the very least, they have an excuse. They're being oppressed. Society is making it really hard just to live your life. So it makes a little bit of sense when someone who is in a constant struggle for survival maybe doesn't give a fuck as much as someone who is not in a constant struggle for survival. But of course, I believe that everyone in these situations deserves solidarity and should encourage solidarity. But again, we live in a country where about 20 to 25% is going to steamroll everyone else because the minority groups that they're targeting are not powerful enough, and the majority does not care. They just don't care. Democrats don't care. Liberals don't care. Apolitical independents, they don't care. No one cares. Your family doesn't care, right? Your colleagues at work, they don't care. When you go to a restaurant and you have your friends with the waitress or whatever, they don't care. No one cares, right? All your Facebook friends, they don't care. Your Twitter followers, they don't care. No one cares. So we're in this weird ass moment where the Civil War is happening. We've been in a Civil War for a long time now, and no one cares. That's why people keep going like, when's the Civil War? We're here. It's already happening. We've been here for a long time. It's just that no one gives a fuck. No one cares. And so when the majority of people, when the overall, the largest amount of people in society don't give a fuck, we are in a position where we need to constantly re-explain reality to them. Because over time, you know, some people are going to go like, whoa, I didn't know this. But whoa, you know, over time, people start caring, right? Now, a lot of the times, it's like an addiction. Blissful ignorance is an addiction. And, you know, you can have someone care a lot about the problems of the world and then get lulled back into apathy. It's possible, right? But, you know, again, but in our position, in my position anyway, at least, and people that I associate with, we're in this position where we just got to re-explain the rules of the game and how it's played to people over and over and over and over and over again. And how many videos have I made that are essentially identical to this one? And how many videos will I make in the future that are essentially identical to this one? Countless, hundreds, thousands, maybe, who knows? I might be doing this for a long time. And is the content really going to be that different? I was saying the same shit 5 years ago. I'm going to be saying the same shit in 5 years. Now, again, there's going to be a lot more dead people. Maybe I'll be one of them. Maybe I won't be. We'll see. Right? But the main rules of the game haven't really changed. the way I would explain this to people isn't really going to change. So, I don't know, man. You know, depressing is a word I would use to talk about this scenario, but, you know. Look at this quote. Look at this fucking asshole. While we understand our words will be of little comfort to those who disagree with us, we sincerely hope we can treat our transgender families with more love and respect as we work to better understand the sides of it. Like, you ever, like, this is that shit, that liberal shit that I really hate. And this guy, Spencer Cox, he's a Republican. This guy made a big stink last year about a transgender sports ban, saying no one should have to live in shame for being who they are. Because Spencer Cox is apparently a gay Republican, I think. I read that somewhere, I'm not sure. But this guy did like a big thing. I am vetoing this anti-trans law. 6 months later, well, you know, I hold the Bible. We understand our words will be of little comfort to those who disagree with us. And again, disagree is doing a lot of work here. Disagree. Yeah. You know, I just disagree on what color grass is. I disagree. My cell phone case. Now, you might see blue. I see green. We just disagree. Now, does one of us have an issue with our eyesight to where maybe this does look green to you? And that's interesting, but hey, we just disagree. Right? This purple pen. Everything I got is purple. I'm like that bitch in Breaking Bad. I just disagree. This is actually red. I disagree. Hey. I'm allowed. Everyone's got an opinion, bro. Just, we disagree. Now again, as I've said, as I've laid out, the facts of the situation, the reality, is that transgender healthcare for kids is one of the most successful forms of healthcare on the planet. That's why they're trying to ban it. They don't want transgender people to be happy. And if a 16-year-old is supposed to have to make the decision of whether or not they want to be an indentured servant for the rest of their life, again, the college scam, then is a 16-year-old capable of deciding what their gender is? Absolutely. If a 16-year-old is capable of driving a giant metal and styrofoam and sometimes plastic death machine, then maybe they are also allowed to decide what gender they are. And again, great news for the skeptics out there is that these processes give you a gigantic turnaround period. Once again, puberty blockers, you can be on puberty blockers for years. Get off, and your whatever normal would have been, you're totally normal. So, the science, the logic, the facts of the situation, again, point to a very different world. But these people, they fundamentally, their only goal is eradication of the other. That's it. Now, they might have other goals, you know, like they might want to be, you know, they might want their work bowling team to win the championship, you know, they might want a certain sports team to win the Super Bowl, you know, they might want their kid to go to a college that's really prestigious, right? They might have other goals, but politically speaking, in how they engage with one another in politics, their goal is eradication of the other. That's just a fact. And it sucks. Having to live life knowing that about 1/5 to 1/4 of Americans want me to die, that's scary shit. Now, I've lived in the South where that number is closer to 1/2 of people want me to die. That was a lot scarier. But it's still pretty fucked up to know that as a whole, in America, about 1/4 of these people want me to die. And about 2/4 would watch it if it happened and wouldn't care at all. That's weird. And again, there's no amount of logic. You can't logic your way out of this. As much as certain college professors might protest in the other direction, there is no out-logicking you can do to a right-wing brain, because they don't operate on logic. And if they did, the rules of their logic are not the rules of yours. There is no such thing as a unified and well-understood English language. Most Americans read and write at a third grade level. You can't really... When most Americans don't even really understand the language, how the fuck could we have a unified language? We don't. We can't. And therefore, logic is impossible. What is the other option? What are the alternatives? What is the solution? I have no solutions. Like, okay, here's a solution. Everyone get out to vote. And vote for Democrats. Because they wouldn't do this, but they do. Look at Hillary Clinton. Is Joe Biden stepping up to the plate to do anything about it? Nah. Is our representative bisexual senator standing up to do anything about this? Nah. So, okay. Every politician currently elected is useless. Sans 1, maybe 5. Okay, so what do we need? Well, we need to get a bunch of new generational politicians. Where do we get the money from? Oh, we don't. So that plan is scrapped. All right, what do we do? Door-to-door canvassing campaigns to try to tell people that they shouldn't want to kill transgender people? Oh, I don't know. That might work, but it might seem a little preachy, so let's probably not. What do you do? I mean, what do you do? I mean, what's the solution? What is it? Pick up guns? Fight in the streets? Nah, that's not really going to happen. You want to know why? Because the middle group. You remember 2020? Remember the George Floyd uprising? What did the white moderates do? They both sides it. Police murdering innocent people. Police torturing black people for entertainment and laughing about it. Police murdering journalists and the press. And what did the middle group do? Both sides. Antifa, Black Lives Matter. They're terrorists. It's a wash. So, good luck with that. That's not going to work. Protesting peacefully? That's not going to work. Protesting violently? That's not going to work either. Unless you get way too violent enough to make a change. Well, then that's going to put us in a rocky situation. Probably not going to work either. So what is the solution? Hey, I'm all ears. I got none. I have no solution. My solution is smoke weed and try my best to not think about the world for most of my day. That's my solution. If you got a better one, I'm all ears. I'm open to it. But my opinion, as of this moment in time, if you were to snapshot my brain and how it functions on January 30th, 2023, my solution is there is no solution. So make the best of it while you can. And living your life the way you are is a radical act. Think about that. Just being yourself. If you're a queer person, if you're black, if you're an immigrant, if you're in any of these minoritarian groups, just being yourself and living your life. That's pretty fucking radical. Think about that, man. That's crazy. You're telling me? I mean, a lot of people love talking about detransitioners. What if they regret? What about trans regret? There was a study done of transgender people that detransitioned, and it found that 98% of people detransitioned because they could not handle the stress of being who they are. Not because they weren't trans, but because going to work while trans, going to church, whatever family, whatever their living situation, it's too stressful. Maybe they got beaten walking home one night and they just said, it's too much. I'd rather repress for that's 98% of detransitioners. But hey, the other 2%, their feelings are valid too. So the other 2%, most of them also, again, just wasn't for me. Hey, it wasn't for me. I tried it. I turned around and I feel great. And it was a good experience and it was worth the try. And now I feel even more secure in my gender identity that matches what I was assigned at birth. I tried switching it. Wasn't really my thing. It felt out of place for me. I switched back and now I'm even more reinforced. I feel, hey, that's great. But yeah, it's true. There are a couple people that go like, damn it, I made a bad mistake and I fucked myself up. That happens with everything. It happens with food. People can eat their way into a heart attack. Should we ban fast food? Alcohol. People will drink. Maybe they'll drink too much and drive. They have a car accident. They come to in a jail cell. 3 people are dead. They made a mistake. Should we ban alcohol? This idea that people need to be infantilized, some people might make a mistake, so let's ban something for everyone, that's ridiculous. But again, logic is irrelevant on this issue. We don't discuss this issue in a logical format. So why am I bothering to make a 30-minute video using logic? I don't know. But hey, whatever.